Hello my dear friends, my dear students, welcome to part 2 of the chapter The Living World. So in this chapter we are going to discuss some of the topics such as differences between living things and non-living things, characters of living organisms, and also the organization of life and the different types of habitats. So these topics we are going to cover in this session, students. So first of all, if I ask you what are the examples of living things and non-living things, what examples will you give? Come on students, tell me the examples of living things. What are the examples of living things? Human being, that is ourselves. Dog, cow, plant, tree, bacteria. These are all the examples of living things, isn't it? So then, examples of non-living things. Come on students, tell me some examples of non-living things. Tell me in the comment box. Come on. Examples of non-living things. Non-living things: pen, duster, table. Next, plate, bench, eraser. So these are some examples of non-living things. Rock, isn't it? So these are different non-living things. My dear students, now let us discuss about the topic characters of living organisms. So before we have studied what are the examples of living things and non-living things. So in the living things we can find some characters which may not be seen in the non-living things. So what are the most important characters which are generally seen in the living organisms? Come on students, tell me some of the characters of living things which you already know. Come on. So what are the characters of living organisms? Yes, movement. So when we think of living organisms or living things, the first character which comes to our mind is movement. The living organisms are able to move from one place to another place. They are able to move from one place to another place in search of food, in search of shelter, in search of mate. They move constantly from one place to another place. So this we also call as locomotion. So moving from place to place is called as locomotion. But non-living things, they does not show movement, isn't it? Next, come on students, what is another character which is seen in living things? Living things show growth. Living organisms growth, isn't it? So the moment they take birth, from the birth onwards, as their age increases constantly, they keep on putting on weight, they will increase in size. Okay, so which we call it as growth. What is growth? Irreversible increase in the size of organism is called as growth. So even we human beings, we also grow, isn't it? Plants also grow. So when a plant germinates from the seed, the sapling will be very small. Gradually it grows into a big tree, isn't it? So all the living organisms, they are able to grow. This is one of the characters of living organisms: growth, movement, growth. Next, come on, reproduction is another important character of living organisms. Students, what is reproduction? Come on students, reproduction is a biological process by which living organisms produce their children, their progeny. Okay, it is a biological process by which living organisms produce their children. We call this process as reproduction, isn't it? So for example, if we have hen in our house, the hen will produce the chicks. If the dog is there in our house, the female dog can produce the pups. The cow, it will give birth to calf, isn't it? So which we call this process as reproduction. Even plants also reproduce with the help of flowers and seeds, isn't it? So this reproduction is not available, it is not seen in the non-living things, isn't it? So third character is reproduction. Next, fourth character is cellular organization. Cellular organization is the fourth character which is seen in the living organisms. What is cellular organization? the living organism is made up of a fundamental unit which is called as cell. Okay, but non-living things, they does not have such structures called as cells. Cellular organization. Okay, next, fifth character, consciousness. 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 What is consciousness? I am aware of my surroundings. I am aware what is going around me. Okay, so currently now there is a rainfall. Rain is falling outside. Okay, so I am knowing what is happening outside. Okay, if it is afternoon, I know there is lot of heat, there is lot of sunlight, I can see with my eyes. That is called as consciousness. Okay, so this consciousness is another character of living organisms, that is constant awareness about the external environment is called as consciousness. This character is not available in non-living things. Okay, consciousness can be also called, it can be also called response to stimulus. Response to stimulus. So what is a stimulus? Stimulus is any change in the external environment. For example, increase in the light intensity, or a sudden sound, or sudden change in the chemical nature of surroundings. Okay, or a kind of pressure, or any sensation like a touch. So all these are called as what? Stimuli, right? So stimulus is a singular, stimuli is plural. So the living organisms, they are able to respond to change in the external parameters, which we call it as response to stimulus. For example, if any sharp object touch my hand, then what I will do? I will retract my hand. So this is called as response to stimulus. This character we can see in all the living organisms, isn't it? Suppose if I touch any hot object, okay, then the moment I touch the hot object, what I do? I will retract my hand. This is called response to stimulus. So all the living organisms have this kind of behavior, which is called as response to stimulus. But non-living things, they doesn't have this character, isn't it, students? Next, the next character of living organisms is metabolism. So this is somewhat difficult term, somewhat new term which you are hearing, right? Metabolism. Metabolism is a term which simply means the total life activities which happen inside the living organisms is called as metabolism. I repeat, the total sum of living activities which happen inside the living organism is called as metabolism. Like your respiration, I am breathing the air. Okay, I am respiring, I am using the oxygen, isn't it? So it is a metabolic activity. I am digesting my food material, it is also a metabolic activity. I am excreting the waste, it is formed in my body, it is also metabolic activity. So these life activities, if you combine together, all these metabolic activities is called as metabolism. This character we are not going to see in the non-living things. Okay, so total how many characters we got, students? Total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 characters we have got, isn't it? Isn't it? So, but what are the most commonly seen characters in general? So, in general, we can see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. Generally, it is common in all the living organisms. Okay, in addition to these main fundamental characters, we can also see some more other characters in the living organisms. For example, some higher animals like apes, and animals like dogs, right? They are able to show another character called expressing emotions. So emotions like happiness. I am very happy now. Okay, I am very happy now because I got some marks, good marks in my exam. So that is happiness. I got tasty food, that's why I am very happy. I got to go to tour, because of that I am very happy. So this kind of feeling the non-living things doesn't have. Happiness, right? So similarly, sadness or sorrow. So living organisms, higher animals also show the emotion called sadness. We don't find in the non-living things. Living things also show anger. Some of the living organisms can also show emotion like anger, higher animals. Okay, so human beings, we show anger. Even chimpanzees, they show anger. Tiger, lion, they also show anger, isn't it? So this type of emotions are not found in non-living things, even though they are very exclusive only to some higher animals, but not seen in the non-living things. Understood, students? Next, homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis means maintaining constant internal body environment is called as homeostasis. The living organisms capable to maintain constant internal body environment. So this character is called as homeostasis. This character is not seen in non-living things. Okay, students, understood everyone? Copy down this. Very important for the NEET exam. Both living things and non-living things, both are made up of fundamental particles which are called as atoms. What they are called as atoms. So the concept of atoms might have been taught in the chemistry and physics class, isn't it? So every object which you see around is made up of some fundamental particles which are called as atoms. They are not even visible in electron microscope also. Okay, so the atoms are made up of electrons and protons, isn't it? So these atoms are present both in the living things and non-living things, isn't it? So in non-living things, several atoms, different types of atoms will combine together and form a structure called as molecule. So many atoms will combine to form a structure called as molecule, right? So now a molecule will have many atoms inside. Okay, it may be 2, it may be 3, it may be 4. Many types of atoms or many atoms will combine to form a molecule, right? So next, several molecules will combine to form a cell organelle in case of living organisms. Several molecules of same type or different types may combine together to form a structure called as cell organelle. Okay, so what is a cell organelle? It is one part which is found inside a living cell. Okay, examples of cell organelles: nucleus, chloroplast. Okay, so these are the cell organelles. One more cell organelle, mitochondria. So these are the examples of cell organelles, right? So in the living organisms, the molecules will combine and give rise to a cell organelle, but in non-living things, such cell organelles will not be formed, isn't it? So just molecules will combine together and gives rise to a compound, isn't it? There is no formation of cell organelle in non-living things. So here the difference comes in the living things. In the living things, the molecules are able to form cell organelles, but in non-living things, molecules will not form cell organelles, right? So next, several cell organelles will combine together and form a living cell. So you look here, students, this is a living cell. Inside the cell, what will be there? Nucleus will be there. Around the nucleus there will be cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm there will be mitochondria. Cell organelles, right? So like this, several cell organelles will combine together and form a structure called as cell, which is called as the fundamental Unit of life. Okay. Next, what happens? Cells, several cells of common origin. Several cells of common origin and common function will combine and form what is called as the tissue. Will combine to form a tissue. So for example, this is one cell, same kind of another cell is there. All the cells have common origin and their function is same. So then what we call this? So this we call it as a tissue. Understood, students? So in the living organisms we have varieties of tissues. So in the plants there is a tissue called as parenchyma. It is one of the common type of tissue which is seen in the plants. So what is the tissue, common tissue which is seen in the plants? Parenchyma. And in the animals there is a tissue called epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue. It is one of the common tissues which is seen in the animals. Okay, then you may ask one question. What about the microorganisms like bacteria? Okay, bacteria is a unicellular organism. There we don't find tissue level organization. They doesn't form tissues. Okay. Next, what is the next level? Several tissues, they combine to give rise to an organ. Okay, come on students, tell me some examples of organs which we see in the human body, such as your heart which pumps the blood, the kidney which will excrete the waste present in the blood, okay, the brain which is the main organ of the nervous system, okay, that controls the different organs, which will control the different sensory organs in our body, and also which will control the muscular system, right? So these are different organs, right? Each organ has its own function. Heart has its own function, kidney has its own function, brain has its own function, right? The liver in our body has its own function. Like this, there are different types of organs in the animals, and similarly you can also find organs in plants also. Flower is organ of sexual reproduction in the plants. Root is organ which helps in absorption of water and minerals in the plants, isn't it, students? Then the stem is another organ which bears the leaves, flowers and fruits, and it also can carry out photosynthesis with the help of leaves. So these are the different organs which we see in the plant, isn't it? Next, several organs will combine to form what is called as an organ system. Will combine to form what is called as the organ system. Come on students, first tell me some examples of organ systems. Digestive system. What is that? Digestive system. Respiratory system. Okay, the digestive system is made up of varieties of organs like mouth, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, small intestine, large intestine, isn't it? Rectum, anus. Respiratory system is also, it is comprising of different organs. Mainly it consists of lungs, the trachea, isn't it, and the windpipe. So this is about the respiratory system, isn't it, students? Next, the organ system. Several organ systems, they will give rise to organism. They will give rise to an organism. So organism is a individual. It is an individual. Okay, every organism is an individual. So human being is an organism. Inside our body there will be number of organ systems, isn't it? So like this, different types of organisms will be formed. So is this rule applicable for all the organisms? No. Organ systems are not seen in some of the organisms. Some of the organisms only will have organ level organization. Some living organisms only will have tissues. Some living organisms only will have cells, may not find tissues. Okay, so this is the thing. Next, several organisms of same type, they will form what is called as population. They will form population. Example, human population. Example what? Human population. Then population of tigers, population of lions, population of deers. Like this, several organisms will form a population. Okay, same type of organisms when they are in large number, in groups living in particular area, we call them as population, right? Next, different populations of different organisms, like population of tiger, population of deer, population of rabbits. Then what it forms? It forms community. It forms what? Community. It forms a community. So in the community, what we'll find? We'll find populations of different varieties of organisms. Next, finally, community. Several communities will form ecosystem. Okay, so the ecosystems consists of different varieties of communities, isn't it? So examples of ecosystems is the grassland ecosystem, forest ecosystem, pond ecosystem. If you take pond ecosystem, what different communities will have? You will have communities of plants, you will have communities of animals. Again, in the community of animals, what you can find? You can find a population of fishes, population of crabs, population of insects, isn't it? So, next, several ecosystems will finally give rise to what is called the biosphere. So, biosphere is the ultimate level in the organization of life. So what is the meaning of biosphere? Biosphere is nothing but earth. Biosphere is nothing but earth. Okay, so this is the different levels of organization of living organisms. Okay, so atoms will give rise to molecules, molecules will give rise to cell organelles, cell organelles will form cell, cell will form tissues, several tissues will form organs will give rise to organ systems will form an organism, and our organisms, many organisms will form a population, and several populations will form community, several communities will form an ecosystem, several ecosystems will form biosphere. So like desert ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, forest ecosystem, pond ecosystem, ocean ecosystem, like this many ecosystems, and they combine, they form biosphere, that is earth. So this is about the concept of organization of life. All of you students note down this in your notebook, very important for your NEET exam.